All right, moving on. We want to go into dating now. So, for the audience, this is our first time entering the relationships part of this podcast, and it's a great opportunity to lead in with this. So, first dates is what we're going to talk about, kind of the transition from how things were in the 80s, how things were in the 2000s, how things are now. So, typically, in your experience, how are dates generally initiated now? You know, a first date. How do people get connected with other people, and how do they go on about trying to check out a date?
I think it's interesting because like pre 2020, it was more of like your maybe personal relationships, your friendships, your going out, things like that. I think that was how a lot of people ended up meeting, ending up on the first date, social events, especially like college and then a little bit after college. But I think now that we're past 2020, I think most of it's like dating apps or it's like Instagram or something like that. And then I think occasionally, yeah, if you are being social enough, you are going out enough, then yeah, you're gonna meet through friends. What about you?
I had no idea. I'm not involved. I sit here all day. So, if you have um, like the situation you said, if you have like dating app situation or you have online situation, how does that even get initiated? Like, how do those things work? How does like a online dating app work? You have like a situation where there's two people who are on the app. They click for what they like. They
Yeah,
type in what they like. They type in about like who they are,
yeah.
and then they match or whatever the case. And so after the match happens, like how do people meet up? How does that initiation start to go generally? And
I
like
think,
we're speaking broad spectrum here. Like, what do you see out in the
yeah.
world?
I think generally it's just like, can you get past that, I guess, the conversation phase into maybe exchanging communications or whatever that ends up being, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's like a phone number or social media or something like that, and then getting into the date. So I think it just depends on kind of how they're flowing and then also the interest level as
Yeah,
well.
what I watch is I watch basically I'm gonna keep this from like 18 to 40. You
Mm,
know, obviously kids have their situation of how they meet, generally school and friends and
yeah,
that kind of thing. But if you look at kind of the 18 to 40, what I'm seeing today, like you said, is a lot of the original contact happens like through the phone. So
yeah.
people don't have to deal with that original challenge of the
The
approach,
approaching,
right?
yeah,
The approach is the
yeah.
thing that's kind of started to sift its way out.
The approach is kind of dead.
And do you think there's pros or cons to that, or both? Like, what in your opinion did the approach era, we'll call it, have to create for a person to initiate? For me, it's the approach creates that original feeling in somebody's
Yeah,
stomach of like, I'm nervous,
yeah,
I don't know how this is gonna go. The people who are nervous about rejection, the
yeah.
people who aren't confident about acceptance,
Hmm.
like, what am I gonna say after? Once I intro it, where will I
Yeah,
go from here? Like, a lot of people stir that up in their brains, and it's why people hesitated on the
yeah,
approach, or why they didn't approach at all, or they'd set up
yeah,
the approach and then go away from it, or
yeah,
be awkward in the moment. And the receiving of the approach, like, there's a skill in that too, and
yeah.
usually from male to female, but sometimes on the flip, like,
Hmm.
there's a skill in being able to gently, tell somebody you're not interested
Yeah,
without like being awkward or being mean or being
yeah,
whatever the case. Where I'm a person who doesn't mind if two individuals, if one person approaches another
mm,
individual and their intention is to try to create some kind of connection or relationship,
yeah,
I don't mind somebody being straight up and down and going like,
yeah,
I'm not interested.
yeah,
But a lot of people get their feelings hurt by that, and a lot of people get nervous about hurting somebody else's feelings
yeah.
that way. So, what is your opinion to the approach?
I think, I think it's definitely disappearing. Like, I think it very in the future, it's literally going to be almost not
Non-existent.
happening at all. I also think it's because of kind of the way that the laws have been moving as well. Like, people are becoming very uncomfortable with strangers approaching them, and
Mm-hmm.
people are like suing and
Mm-hmm.
all this other stuff. So it's also making it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously with the 2020 situation, like nobody was really able to do anything, and that kind of like brought it down even more. I think there's to a certain extent positives to it. Like if you're interested in someone, you go up and talk to them, and you express your interest, and I think that's good for personal confidence.
Mm-hmm.
But also the other side of it is do you want to potentially end up getting in trouble for it, right?
Right.
Just because we're in the U.S., everybody's sue happy here, so if somebody doesn't like you approaching them or saying something to them, they can make it a problem for you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So if you have a situation where somebody, and you see this, I imagine pretty often, somebody is in a public space and there's somebody who they'd like to approach, somebody who they'd like to inquire about or even like meet for the first time, people will literally see that person, go back door, find a way to get their information, whether that's through social, whether that's through a friend, whether that's through like another contact, reach out to them after that
Yeah.
in hopes to like reconnect.
Yeah.
That for me is where it's like, it's too much. So I'm a person who I must live in the times in terms of I consult a lot of people, I interact with a lot of people, I see a lot of youth and adults on a daily basis. And so I get a lot of sample size of stories, of watching, you know, whatever the case.
Yeah.
But if I had an issue with like the way things are now, it's where people have lost. I believe that part is really important. I believe the beginning of showing I'm willing to put myself in an uncomfortable situation for the potential of this working out.
Yeah.
That concept right there is important in business relationships and sports.
Yeah.
No risk equals limited reward.
Yeah.
So if a person goes, hey, there's this person across the way who I would want to reach out to, but instead of reaching out, I'm going to ask 10 other people around, hey, you know who that is? You know what their Instagram is? Or you know what their blah, blah, blah is? Or like how to get in touch? Or like, let me go try to stalk them later and then get in touch.
Yeah.
I believe those situations, while I'm sure they work out sometimes, that takes away a little bit of the confidence that should be gained from, okay, I want to do this. Let me amp myself up. Let me get prepped. Okay, let's go. I'm going to do it. I'm in. I'm there now.
Yeah.
There's no going back. That part I think is very important just to developing confidence, because in the long run, a human being that you're with, you want to feel about them that they're a confident person and they could stand on their own 2 feet while being a part of the partnership.
Yeah.
And vice versa, you know, and I do believe like a little bit gets lost in that. It's not that confidence can't be developed as you go or in other ways, and that's like a deal breaker. But for me, like that part would be really important. I wouldn't like it, you know, if somebody ever in my life previously had reached out to me after like literally I saw them see me, especially if it was multiple times, and then like they reached out like a different way knowing they were gonna see me to like connect, I would like question about it. I'd be like, why didn't you just pull up?
There's the funny part. There's the other way where they'll like find you on social media, and they'll see you in real life and act like they don't know you.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's people. There's people who do connect like that. Like, they're talking a whole lot and shouting out and go back and forth. But in real life, it's like we never met type situation.
Exactly.
Those situations you got to be wary about for sure. For sure. That's funny. Okay, so if we look back to like the 2000s, this is 24 years ago. It's a while. Like, what were things like in terms of like creating a first date as best you can remember? Remembering that this was the time there was no smartphone. So there was no video messaging. There was no iMessage text. Like texting was like brand new in what? We're talking 2021, 2022 is right around when texting first started coming out.
Well,
internet came out in 1991.
There was still texting in like we'd say probably like maybe early like 2000s.
Yeah.
So there was text messaging, but not everyone really had like a phone yet.
Right.
Like I think I got my first phone when I was like in middle school. I think I was like 12 or 13 years old when I got one, and there was texting and stuff, which was like I think 2003 or something like that.
It's tough though. Like in the 90s, it was like AOL Instant Messenger, and then like you hit the 2000s, and it was like brick phone or like the flip phone was popping,
and
or like the sidekick,
the Nokia, and then the sidekick.
Like people who had the sidekick, I was like, that's game right there. Anybody who had a sidekick, you were like, okay, you already know what the situation is with them.
I got a sidekick too. That was hilarious.
I bet you did.
Nah, it was back in the day. It was like it was straight. It was relationships, and then it was approaching. Yeah, like that was what it was. Like it was either friend group or a friend group of a friend group, and then it was like hype up, go approach. Right. Like that was literally it. Right. You get hyped up by the crew, and then you just go and talk to them.
For sure. Like to where you could see it coming. Yeah. Like 4 people huddled around.
Yeah.
No, just go do it. Yeah. Just go do it. The other person's like kind of waiting on you type situation, for sure. Remember the days. That's funny. That's funny. All right, then taking it back to the 80s. This is before you and I were born. So if we look back in the 80s, like, what do you imagine the scene was like? This is before cell phones. This is before internet. Like, there's There's none of it. There's like a home phone.
I think that was, from what I remember, that's like the parent stuff. I think that was like 100, like basically 100% like approach.
It's either approach or it's like a friend approach.
Of a friend. Yeah, you
friend
get the
approach.
note or like
hey, such and such likes you. Yeah, that's funny. And then the home phone. People staying up. You remember the era? People staying up an hour and a half, 2 hours talking on the home phone, and like people on the like every phone in the house is on the same line. So if somebody picks up the phone, they're on your call.
Conversation.
They're on your call.
I'm in your conversation.
Yeah. So you pick up the phone, and then mom or dad or brother might pick up the phone, and like you hear click on.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm on the phone type of situation. Hey, you need to get off the phone. It's like past your bedtime. You need to do your homework.
What about the initial? Funny. What about the initial phone call, and then dad or brother picks up, or
may I
mom
talk
picks up?
to whoever? May I talk to such and such? Like, who is this calling?
Yeah, who are you?
Who is this?
It was like, stop calling my phone.
Exactly. Hung up, buddy. And like for people, it was the biggest deal to have their own line. Like the people who had their own phone line in their room, like that was like the move.
That was when they were like they created the second line in the house. It's like I got my own.
The older
phone
sister,
line.
the older brother, like I got my own line type situation. Like so, I'm talking to whoever I want to talk to, but only at home in my house, setting plans. That is too funny. They need to bring those times back. That needs to be like a game show. It's like where people have to live like it was then. You know, they don't get cell phones. Like you got to go do what you do during the day, and it's like you got to figure out the connections through like home phone calling. But it's like families.
Yeah.
It's like families who sign up. So it's like a minimum of 3 kids. So it'd be like 2 sisters and a brother, or 2 brothers and a sister, or 3 boys, whatever. Yeah. It's like 6 families that have multiple kids. And the parents aren't really in it, but the families have to live together in houses. Yeah. But they're like trying to find a love connection or whatever, like they do on the shows. That'd be comedy if they're like, we're taking really y'all back.
It was.
y'all got 1 month or 2 months. Like y'all got to live like this, no cell phones. That'd be wild.
I better make it happen.
For real, that'd be wild.
It's like that dating show where they talk behind the walls. Mm-hmm. You know what that's called?
No.
Love is Blind. Yeah. I've been hearing about that.
Man, yeah, I had to jump out of the show situation after 2022. And if you know, you know.